All right. I feel like I should have a guitar up here or something. I should be making some music. So hello everyone. My name is Jonathan Kuuskuski. It's a real pleasure to be here today. So thank you, Elena, and the whole Ann Arbor Area Piano Teachers Guild for inviting me to come and speak with you today. So I work with students primarily at the college level, and my main mission, primary goal, is to help them prepare to launch a life in the arts, whatever that means. For some, that means they want to create an arts company of some kind, an ensemble, a festival, a theater, a dance troupe. For others, they're looking for employment. They're looking to go out into the world and to get hired by some arts organization and to build a life that way. And for still others, they're just looking for skills to help them carve out their own path, to go out on the frontier to New York City or Chicago or LA or somewhere abroad and to build a kind of career as a performing artist. So when I was thinking about what we could speak about today that would be most relevant, as a pianist and thinking back in my sort of trajectory and hearing at this point about 1,000 student stories, I've worked with about 1,000 students one-on-one over the course of my time working in higher education. It dawned on me that so much of what makes those students who launch into professional life successful starts before they come to see me. And there's a big difference in terms of the capability, the confidence, and frankly the resources that students at the collegiate level tap into, depending on how they have been prepared for that life. And I think as music teachers, piano teachers, we know this. And especially if you work with students that are preparing for college, I'm sure you have those kinds of conversations with them in terms of the musical skills that you're helping them develop, but also in terms of just thinking about their futures. So what I'm going to talk to you today is about is that very topic in a very specific way. You may be wondering why it's A to T, why not A to Z or A to G? But there is a specific reason why we're going to talk about the T. And the T is representative of a set of skills and a sort of profile that is becoming increasingly important for graduates as they embark upon their professional lives. In the handout, I have a sort of summary of the talk, which I hope will give you kind of a synopsis of the key points that I'm going to talk through. But I'm going to give you some examples as well. My aim is to talk for about 45 minutes, and then we'll open up to questions so that we can delve into any of the questions that you have based on what we talk about. All right? Great. So I want to start by talking about aspiration. So, about 50 or 60 years ago, if you were a pianist on your way to, pursuing your dream to become a pianist, and frankly, not even that long ago, when I was 25 years ago, when I was starting out as a serious pianist, looking to go to college to pursue music, wanting to have a career as a pianist, there was a pretty clear model for what that meant, right? And that could be somebody like Rubinstein, or Martha Argerich, or Claudio Rauber, you name your favorite pianists, right? And the image of what it meant to be a pianist and the skills that one needed to be successful were pretty well defined, right? It was the pursuit of the ability in a sort of solitary, almost monk-like manner, right? To cultivate the skills that will make you capable of creating an astoundingly original and authentic performance, but one that is also rooted in the best practices and historical knowledge of the discipline. When I talk to students today who are preparing for their lives, their image of what the possibilities are look quite different, right? That's not to say that the sense of the deep skill and commitment and discipline and all those things are not important, but they're confronted, most of the students, right, that are engaged in this work at the collegiate level are focused on that, especially at Michigan, but I think at college programs across the country. But what they're becoming increasingly aware of is the need to become a jack or a Jill of all trades, right? And in fact, the point I'm going to make today is regardless of whether you work primarily with students who are going into music school or you are working with students who will go on to a number of other academic disciplines, these realities apply in both cases. And I'm going to frame my talk today in a way that I hope addresses students regardless of what their collegiate aspirations are. So what does this mean though? How can we kind of talk about this in more concrete terms? Because there are one-person bands out there, but that's a little bit of an exaggerated metaphor. Well, we know some things about arts graduates today. And this is information from the Strategic National Arts Alumni Project, which is the largest professional development study in any field, and it's looking at the outcomes of arts graduates in all disciplines to measure what their realities actually are out in the world, and also to kind of, or aim to understand how or how not their training prepares them for those realities. So one thing we know across all disciplines, across the United States, about 80% of professional performing artists have been self-employed at some point. It's higher in certain disciplines than others. I know the data from the University of Michigan is congruent with this. So 4 out of 5 musicians who go out there are likely to be self-employed. And that makes sense. How many self-employed piano teachers do we have? Yeah, I think it's a higher ratio in this room. That means that graduates in arts programs are more likely to start a business than business graduates are. We also know that about 1/3 of the artists who decide not to pursue their careers in the arts, they're graduates of an arts program at the collegiate level, who decide to abandon the field, report that their income earning potential, and that is not, I should clarify, that does not mean the amount of money they know they can earn, because they don't know how much they could earn. But the challenge of creating sustainable income is the driving force that makes them leave. Okay? And we also know that the top skills reported by artists who are engaged in professional lives in the arts, the top skills reported in terms of relevance and applicability to building that life are these: creativity, teamwork, critical thinking, broad knowledge, leadership, artistic skills, of course, and improving with feedback. I've included a link on the handout if you want to go to the website and learn about this some more. It includes an interactive infographic where you can actually see how these stack up. What's interesting is that they essentially are within 1 or 2 points of relevance, all within 94 to 96% of relevance. Which means that, the idea that what we need is purely a deep artistic acumen is not enough. It's requisite, for sure. But professionals out there are telling us that they need other types of skills and a different sort of set of competencies in order for them to create that art that is so important to them. Indeed, most professionals in the world of the performing arts have what might be called a portfolio career, which means that they are engaged in a number of activities that both add value to their communities, but also creates revenue for them across about 8 different modalities. I'm going to read the 8 just because I know the text is a little bit small. So in other words, artists can make impact and a living through performing activities, through teaching, through composing or arranging, through writing or researching, through publishing or making stuff, through distribution or selling stuff, through administration or the production of activities, products or services, and repairing. And repairing, of course, we all know the value of piano technicians for sure, but repairing can also extend into the world of physical and holistic wellness for the individual. It's a whole new field that we can put into that bucket. So, to give you an illustration of this, let's say you aim to become a performer. That's your dream. Well, if you are really good and you get those opportunities, whether by grit or by luck or a combination of both, you're likely going to end up having to do some administrative work to support that, even if you hit the jackpot and you get that great opportunity. And as you administer your growing performing career, you likely will run into the opportunities, right, to expand, and in some cases the responsibility to create activities in these other modalities, right? We all know probably a famous pianist, Paul Pedro-Scoda, is famous for being an excellent piano technician, has a whole collection of pianos. Andres Schiff, the same. How many pianists do we know that are first and foremost performers but also teach? Whether in master classes or in university residencies or as faculty? How many also, pianists of all levels, compose or arrange as part of what they do? It's not that uncommon, right? So this is an example where you might have a primary pursuit that creates a variety of other supplemental activities that help support and enhance your ability to succeed in this one area. Let's say you aim to become a teacher, piano teacher, the highest pursuit, right? It's quite reasonable to expect that there might be an opportunity there as you go deep into your pedagogy and you find gaps in the existing resources that you might want to come up with your own, right? We all know stories and different methods and other resources out there that have come out of that very, or identified that problem. Well, if you're teaching and you have resources and you're publishing to help supplement the resources available for your students, all of a sudden now you're also distributing. You might be creating, composing, or collaborating with a composer. And again, you're administrating a small business in a way that maybe you never imagined. These are two snapshots of stories that I hear over and over and over and over again in artists that are, frankly, already 18 or 19 years old. These are the kinds of activities that or realities they're bumping into as they pursue activities. And it applies more broadly than just for performing artists. We know, generally speaking, in the United States, that about 1/3 of American workers are freelancing in some capacity. That could be that they have a side small business, that they're doing some other activities, or their primary job could be project-based and could involve income that is variable throughout the course of the year. And the expectation projections are that by 2020, 91 million Americans will be doing project-based work of some kind. 4 out of 10 working Americans. So, what does that mean for us if we're living in what we might consider a gig economy? And how do the professional realities of that world impact the ways that we prepare our students? I'm going to talk a little bit about two sort of facets of this question, and one is rooted in a philosophy, and the other is rooted in some practices that I think we already undertake as music educators. So first, let's talk about the T student. That's what I'm here to talk to you about. So it turns out that research is finding that those students who exemplify sort of T-shaped profile are more resilient and more successful in the face of these kinds of realities. And the T-shaped student answers the paradox of, well, how can we create all these opportunities across a broad spectrum of possibilities, but still be really good at something? How can we both diversify and specialize at the same time? The T student is one who has depth, who's developed expertise, can apply deep skills, stay focused, and complete very complex work, but is also able to collaborate and communicate effectively across disciplines to make change and impact happen. Now, when I think about developing deep skills, I can think of very few practices that are more effective than learning how to play piano. It's one of the most challenging skills that anyone can undertake, especially if you're talking about a progressive study that leads to performing large canonical works from memory in public. It's an incredible, magical pursuit, which is why I think we enjoy going to see pianists perform on stage. So I'm making the argument that I think our students are exceptionally primed to be T students. And maybe you're thinking about some of your own students and you realize they're like this, right? What I'm going to talk a little bit about today is less about cultivating depth, because I'm sure you do that already, and more about how to supplement that with breadth. So what are the practices that we use to cultivate T-shaped skills? I'm going to talk about 4 primary practices, and I just want to share my perspective, and I want you to think about how they resonate with you. Are you already doing these things, and in what ways do they already permeate your practice? Growth mindset, process orientation, collaborative learning, and resilience. So a growth mindset, is anybody familiar with that term? Comes from psychology of learning. So a growth mindset is essentially the opposite of a fixed mindset. A fixed mindset is a sort of a mental paradigm wherein talent and a fixed set of abilities are what drives achievement. A growth mindset focuses on effort and basically frames setbacks or failures as opportunities to broaden skills, not a litmus test of ability, right? It defines failure as a requisite component of pursuing excellence. Now, I can think to the practice sessions over the course of my life and how many failures were part of that process. I'm sure we can all think back to test performances that didn't go as well as we wanted, right? We cultivate a growth mindset in the very pursuit of learning how to perform works that cannot be learned within 5 minutes, right? But the larger the works and the more progressive the projects are, the more I think we have to rely on a growth mindset in order to really empower our students. The second kind of key practice that helps our students develop T-shaped skills is a process orientation. And process orientation is essentially focusing on not only the outputs of the learning process, but the very process itself. So what is answering the question of what is our student learning at every stage of this project. How does iterative practice create residual benefits? And how even small-scale failures can lead to long-term growth if we persevere through practice. The example I like to use is sight reading. You know, in order to become a good sight reader, unless you have a special talent, right, requires, and even in that case, requires a lot of practice. And part of that practice is understanding that you will fail, right? Likely many, many, many times. But we know that, I mean, I would assume, anyways, that most of us, when we assign sight reading practice, it's not purely to master that sight reading exercise. It's to develop a broader acumen, right? To be able to apply the skills we're developing through those small-scale sight reading exercises into collaborative learning environments, right? Into doing chamber music, duets, or just to learn solo music more effectively, right? So this is basically something that I think all of us do, whether we're completely aware of it or not, which is to say that we understand that working through any particular passage or any particular keyboard skill is part of a larger whole, and that failing forward through practice, resilience, and iteration will help us enhance our skills in the long term. I already mentioned collaborative learning briefly, but this is another key component of helping our students develop T-shaped skills, because it tests the transferability of your individual skills in a collaborative setting, right? I think anyone who's coached chamber music or participated in chamber music can attest to that. But even on a smaller scale, if we're doing piano duets, I think we can see how our students develop the ability to communicate, align artistic values, and their physical coordination with another person. It challenges students to flex their creative muscles, to compromise, right? And to align their values with other people to complete a project to completion. It's a perfect model for teamwork. And in fact, there are actually professional groups that do seminars for Fortune 500 and 100 companies using chamber music as a model for how teams can work more effectively. So we're doing a great job. And finally, resilience. When you read, if you're interested, I've included some resources on this research on T-shaped skills and how they're impacting the professional worlds our students are about to embark in. Grit is one of the key qualities that permeates those stories. And frankly, this is an area where